Good afternoon, everybody. Uneducated economist here. So I'm going to leave a bunch of links down in the description for you guys. Mainly, I'm going to be talking about the deflationary scenario that I feel could be coming. And now, ultimately, the first thing that I want to talk about is the bullwhip effect. And this is something that I have talked about several times, and we noticed it first in lumber. When lumber inventories were depleted back in 2019, and I'm talking some serious inventory depletions, mill curtailments, shutdowns, there was a significant slowdown in the building material from the producers. 2020 hit, pandemic kicks in, lockdowns start up, and even more inventory depletions come from the stimulus checks. People were locked down at home. They wanted new decks and fences. They were remodeling for remote working, moving out to the country. There was a huge demand for building materials. It wiped out the little inventory that was left. That sent prices to $1,700 per thousand on the lumber futures. Now, typically, lumber futures would be trading around $400 per thousand. So when it ran up to $1,700 per thousand, that was quite extreme, and people quit buying. I mean, it went from a 2x4/8 standard and better being $3.50 to all of a sudden now they're $13.50. And the amount of sales dropped off significantly. Well, when the inventory built up, I mean, you think about it, the mills were in high production at this point. I mean, they want to pump out as much lumber as possible when you're getting, 14, 15, 16, 1700 per thousand. You want to pump out as much lumber as possible. So these mills were pumping out a lot of lumber at the time, and it filled up the distribution network. Soon as the distribution network, like this distribution hubs, the rail lines, the truckers, the wholesalers, and the retailers, once they were all filled with lumber again, boom, the prices crashed almost immediately. And this is very similar to like what happens in the bullwhip effect. Like we refer to it, or at least we describe the bullwhip effect with some plumbing fittings. And I thought that was a really good analogy of it too, because like I work at a hardware store. I work lumber, retail, this is what I do for a living. And a lot of these guys who do groundwork, like septic systems or excavation work, they need this particular fitting. It connects two different types of pipe together. So if you got cast iron and plastic and you want to put these two different types of pipe together, this rubber coupling with hose clamps on each end of it is like the perfect piece for it. And they're fairly cheap. They're only like, 10, 15 bucks. But it's a critical component to the completion of the job. Without it, you can't finish. So a lot of these guys were coming in looking for this particular part and couldn't find it. Well, when the inventory did come in, they would buy them all. Like I'd be like, well, you only need one, right? And he was like, yeah, but I ran short before. It held up my job. I'm not going to be running out of these things again. And so they would buy all of them. Well, he wouldn't be the only one. The other guys who do that kind of work, they were buying them all up too as soon as they would see them. So it was like this panic buying that was taking place. Well, our computer algorithm is seeing that the inventory is constantly needing to be replaced. We're not carrying enough of this stuff. The demand is much higher, so it starts ordering more. Well, the wholesalers, they see the same thing. All of a sudden, they see all these orders coming in that are much bigger than what they had seen before. So they start going to the manufacturers saying, hey, we need a lot more of this stuff because there is a huge demand coming from all these orders that we see out here. Not realizing that if they followed all the way back down to the end of the line, that the customer at the very end was buying 4 instead of 1 because they were panic buying, thinking that they weren't be able to get them again in the future. So this sent this ripple effect throughout the industry where all of a sudden everybody thought that there was this huge demand for this material, but really there was not. It was just a panic buying that took place. And it wasn't just from panic buying because they were afraid they weren't going to be able to get it, but the prices were moving up as well. So they would hurry up and buy it before they had a chance to lose that purchasing power. So they would buy more than what they needed. This is happening throughout the entire economy for all kinds of items. It's not just lumber or these little plumbing fittings, but for everything out there. There was a huge demand coming from the idea that there was going to be a shortage of it or that the prices were going to go up, but that was a false demand. It was a panic buying that had taken place. So now the warehouses are filling up with stuff, and you can see that down there in the description. Just go and take a look. Even with lumber, the lumber mills, like there's an article that I'm going to leave down there for Can4. I want to thank, I think it was Jacob who sent me that article. I appreciate that. for sending me that article. But if you go and you read it, Canfor's loaded with material. Like, they've filled up their available space to store their material. And the problem is that it's not that there's no demand for it, is that there's very little trucking, and the trucking that is available is very expensive, and they cannot get that material away from the mill fast enough. All of a sudden they have no more room, and they have to curtail development simply because of the overabundance of inventory that they have. Now, here's the problem with it. That inventory is eventually going to find its home. I mean, it's sold. It's got a place to be. And once it starts moving and getting out there, there's no inventory being replenished at this time. So there's going to be a time in there where there's going to be where there's going to be less material being produced or being sold because of the curtailing that's happening now. Does that make sense? So they're sitting on a bunch of inventory that's already sold. They're curtailing development. Once that inventory is gone, there's nothing there to replenish it with. And all of a sudden the mill has to fire up and do double duty again. This is that oversupply, oversupply situation that we've been talking about for quite some time. And so you can see already that the warehouses are starting to fill. The lumber yards are showing signs of the lumber mills, are showing signs of the inventory building up and the lack of availability of trucking that's creating issues with it, which is going to, slow down manufacturing of that particular product. So then you go all the way to the Federal Reserve, and a lot of people say, well, it doesn't matter what the supply and demand was. It was all from the Federal Reserve and their monetary policy. So a lot of people looked at like the Federal Reserve money printing and said, look at all the prices go up, put these two together hand in hand. There's no need to look any further. That was it. So, okay, well, let's take that into consideration, because right now the Federal Reserve is backing away from that monetary policy where they are actually going to go into what's going to be referred to more as quantitative tightening. Now, they're not there yet, but they could be, and they could go there very soon. Right now, they're lifting the interest rates at the Fed funds level. This is where the big banks on an overnight lending, this is where they get their target from, is from this Fed funds. So they're shooting for the Fed funds rate to do their overnight lending. This is the basis from all loans after that. Well, the Federal Reserve wants to raise that interest rate. They want to slow the economy down. They want to put a hold on demand, but it wasn't an oversupply of demand, or it wasn't an overwhelming demand that was creating the prices to go up. It was a huge undersupply from a breakdown of the supply chain. I mean, that's my opinion on it. So they're going to raise interest rates to try and slow the demand coming into a time when there was an overstock of inventory. What is going to happen to manufacturers? Manufacturers are going to get hit hard. Producers are going to get hit very hard, as there's going to be no demand due to the fact that the interest rates are rising, putting it harder on the consumer to make those purchases. But then at the same time, we have this inventory build up due to this huge overwhelming demand, which really was more panic buying. That is going to leave very little room for new orders going to the manufacturers. You see what's happened here? Now, at the same time, the Federal Reserve, they haven't announced quantitative easing, but they could go into balance sheet reduction by just simply allowing the treasuries to roll off the balance sheet. So when these treasuries come due, that's money coming back to the Fed. Unless they roll that over into new debt by buying treasuries again with it, then essentially that money is destroyed as those treasuries get paid back. We have to figure out what the Federal Reserve is going to do, whether or not they go into balance sheet reduction or not, whether it'll allow interest rates, the Fed funds level, to rise above the 2.5% mark, where I feel is a neutral rate. So when the Fed funds level gets to around 2.5%, that is somewhere where they are neither accommodating nor restricting the economy. They're neutral. Anything above that is going to start having some serious economic pain. So keep an eye on that stuff. Once the Federal Reserve gets to around that 2%, you're going to hear a lot of chatter about them going the opposite way and start to reverse course, or stop altogether as far as the interest rates rising. We have no idea what they're going to do at that point. But that is where we have to watch. Once the quantitative tightening kicks in, that's deflation. I mean, think about it. Inflation is the expansion of money and credit. Deflation is the destruction of money and credit. That scenario is about ready to start taking place. How it affects the prices, that's anybody's guess. Okay. I personally feel that prices will come down to move the inventory out. But anyhow, I opened up the mail already. I am sorry, guys. I tried doing this video earlier and realized I had messed it up. So I thought I'd open up the mail for you real quick here. This is from SF out of Olympia. And they write this. To Uneducated Economist, I've been following your channel since the early days of the pandemic. Watching your channel helped inspire me to start my own. I know you have a bit of a complicated history with silver, but who could say no to a free coin? As a token of my appreciation, please accept the Mercury dime as well as the first edition Silver Forever sticker. Wishing you the best. Cheers, Silver Forever. Well, please go check out Silver Forever's channel. Give him a thumbs up and like. Go check out his videos and show him some love for sending me this wonderful sticker. Thank you very much, Silver Forever. And this old dime, which I love because, oops, I got it upside down there, don't I? Because it still has the patina on it. You didn't clean it. And I think that is the best way to keep your coins, is in the original condition that you had received them in without cleaning them. That's the way I like it. I like that old patina on them, and I think it actually keeps to the value of the coin as well. But I don't know. I'm not much of a coin collector for monetary purposes. I collect them just for the fun of collecting coins because that's what I do. And then this one, of course, comes from our buddy. You'll recognize this, right? Who does that? UFO Engines. Thank you so much, UFO Engines. You always send the coolest stuff. Says, thought your boy would like these. Right? That's what he sends. And he's got his little airplane that he flies right here. I love that. Sent me a $10 bill too. Thank you very much, UFO Engines. And he sent these cool Star Wars walkie-talkies. And you're right, the boys are going to love those. And then a portable weather radio station. Thank you very much, UFO Engines. That was very cool of you to send me those things. Send the boys those things. Okay, links are in the description. Uneducated Economist. You guys let me know.